Life is precious. We're not promised tomorrow. But it's true. When I sat over the side of my dad's grave, I realized that we're not promised tomorrow. And this life is short. And all the things that we put off over and over, we need to live with a sense of urgency. After we buried my dad, Heather's mom lost her battle with leukemia that would eventually turn into lymphoma and ultimately a brain tumor would take her life. And to say that it spun our world upside down is an understatement. We're fairly young at the time with young kids, and life got crazy really fast. And I don't know. I wrote books about this. It's been a long, long time, and I've just unpacked this in my head a million times, and I cannot tell you why this particular day was special. But how do you used to have to put my socks and shoes on me when I go to work in the morning? And for some reason, this particular day, when our eyes met, I thought, oh my gosh, like I'm the next human. Like she's gonna have to do this for me. She's gonna have to go through all the same stuff we just went through. You know, the obituary, picking up the coffin, all this crazy stuff. And she's gonna have to do it for me. And then on top of that, when it's over and the dust settles, she's gonna raise 2 kids alone. So I knew I had to do something. I just didn't know what to do. So I did what really smart people do. I went on YouTube, I found a really famous influencer, and I followed her. This guy I found, to this day I have not found this video, by the way. He had this thing called bariatric surgery. He lost a whole bunch of weight, and a year later, he was just as big as I was. A year later, he's running marathons. Like, that's what I have to do. So I went to this clinic that we had, got all the OKs, I went to some classes. All I had left to do was get signed off by the doctor to get surgery. But when I went in there, they sat me down for my blood pressure. It was 255 over 115. I was already on 2 different blood pressure meds, highest they could go. My pulse was like 130. And at this time, I was on like 20 prescription meds, not counting my painkillers. And the doctor said, you're never going to make it through the surgery. Your heart's not going to make it. And he said, not only that, I know with all these narcotics and how the anesthesia is going to affect you. So I can remember going home that night thinking, I tried. Like I honestly tried. And now, of course, it's not my fault, it's the doctor's fault. Because I did what I was supposed to do. But I went to bed that night, and I couldn't stop thinking about this one day that Heather was telling me about when she went to the hospital with her mom. Her mom, towards the end with the brain tumor, she kept going back for more and more radiation. And it was kind of like, it wasn't doing anything. And the doctor said to her, Carol, why do you keep coming back for this radiation? And she said, I just want to be here for one more day with my family. And I could not shake that. And that made me think, like, just out of respect for her, I have to try something. So I did. And again, I think the point to this is I did a lot of things wrong, but I did something. And I think a lot of people get stuck when they have this perfect plan in place, and then they do nothing. So I went, at the time it was called Atkins. It was like my dream because my life was meat and cheese and processed foods. And this was perfect for me. I could eat, chicken wings and cheese every day and be on the diet. And to be fair, I did lose weight, but it's definitely not sustainable and it's not healthy at all. I put a picture of a chair here because I figured, well, people eat right, but then they exercise. And I couldn't hardly walk. It was knee immobilizers and canes and crutches. But I could get out of a chair once. It was a lot of work. And I thought, you know what? If I can get out of a chair once, I can do it twice. So I wrote down in a journal, I wrote down what I was going to eat for the day, and I wrote chair times 2. And that's how I started my fitness journey. I would get up out of my office chair, I'd sit back down, and I'd get up again. And those changes actually started a cascade of a whole bunch of cool stuff. Because as I was doing this, I was losing weight, but I wasn't feeling better. I was watching Netflix in this film called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead popped up on the screen. And to be honest with you, I didn't really pay attention to what was going on in the movie. I just knew I wanted what Joe Cross had. Joe Cross comes to the U.S. From Australia. He's got a crazy cool accent, and he consumes nothing but vegetable and fruit juice out of this juice machine for 60 days. All his metabolic numbers get better. He loses some weight. But more importantly, he cures himself from this autoimmune disease. And by the end of the film, I was so inspired, I went and bought one of these juicers. Now, keep in mind, We processed, I grew up on a farm, we processed all our own meats, hunted and fished, but we weren't hunting and fishing, we were planning on hunting and fishing, and this was my life. I didn't really think this through. I don't know if I thought I was going to be putting pizza in this thing or what, but I get the juicer home January 1st, 14 years ago. Something like 14 years ago, January 1st, I start loading up this juicer on New Year's Day, and I don't know if anyone's ever made juice before, but I put what I thought was a lot of vegetables in there and about a quarter cup of juice. I said, we got a problem. So, the one thing that this did is it showed us how to shop for real food. We had always bought packages. We went to the freezer and refrigerator section. We never was for weird people. And so the juice fast starts. 3 days, like I'm like miserable. Like I was so hungry, and most of the time I just went to bed. The 4th day, my hunger subsided, and the 5th day, I have told that I get choked up just talking about this. But the 5th day, no matter how many times I told a story, like I can't not get goosebumps. I woke up in the same exact position that I fall asleep. 5 days. I'm just vegetable and fruit juice. And I couldn't believe it. It was literally a miracle. This is all I wanted to do, like all the vodka, all that stuff to try to sleep. And literally 5 days on raw juice did that for me. As time went on, my eczema got better, my breathing got better, my face cleared up, I got some color back, I got some energy. I would forget to take my medicine. But it was getting close to the end of 30 days, and I knew it's not sustainable. So, but because I watched this, a film called Forks Over Knives popped up in my mind. And I tell people that Forks Over Knives didn't just save my life, it literally gave me a brand new life. And after I watched that, and we can talk about getting aggravated about seeing Colin Campbell's research on casein and milk protein and cancer. Like no one ever talked, going through my father and my mother-in-law, no one ever once talked about nutrition. We did know that her mom, towards the end, she was craving blueberries and asparagus. Weird. But looking back, we didn't know what that was, but looking back, like her body needed nutrition. And even me, like I was overeating, but I was undernourished. I was just eating empty crap. But because I watched this, a whole bunch of other breadcrumbs came back up, and this all started making sense to me. So along with the food, I feel like I have to tell the story every time I do a presentation. So Heather used to walk with the kids a lot. And I would usually sit in my chair with ice on my knees, icing stuff down, and she'd always be polite and say, "You want to go for a walk?" And I would deny her every single time. And one day she goes, "You want to go for a walk?" And I could just see when I said no, I said something that applies to her. And I think I asked her what was wrong with the car. Like, why would you walk with a perfectly good car in the driveway? But I could see how badly she felt. So I'm like, you know what, I'll go for a walk. So this first walk, we were supposed to go 3/4 of a mile, turn around and come back. And I couldn't finish. I made it a little less than halfway. My kids captured this lovely moment with a picture. You can see how happy I was. But at this point, I was immobilized. I literally couldn't bend my knees, so it was like walking on sticks. It was just full. But I don't know, for some reason, I wanted to go back and finish that walk, and I did. And, you know, I had always loved the outdoors and stuff, so I really became passionate about hiking. And a half mile would turn into 1, and 1 would turn to 2. And some days I would go out on a Saturday, it would take me all day, but I'd cover 10 miles while I was hiking. And I would get my family involved, and it was so nice because for years, I kind of couldn't do anything with them. And it was so nice to finally be able to do stuff with the family. We had like an outdoor playground. Another one of the dominoes that kind of tipped for me, has anybody ever been to the high peaks Adirondacks? It's my favorite place on the planet, and we love it. They're like classic. And my cousin actually climbed a high peak, and he said something to me that literally changed my life. He said, you know, people always say, oh, the picture doesn't do it justice, because when you think about it, how many people actually stand on the summit of a mountain and see it with their own eyes? Forget the picture, like actually see that. So I called my doctor, the same one that denied me the surgery. I called my doctor and I said, Dr. Kumar, I'm going to be climbing a mountain, so we got to do something with these immobilizers. And instead of laughing, he said, okay. So he sent me to prosthetics company. They casted my legs and they did these fancy braces. And I started walking steps, just 5, 6 steps. That turned into 10 and then 20. Before I knew it, I was actually timing myself how many hours I'd run up and down the stairs. I did that a whole winter, and then in the spring, I tried my first summit and didn't make it. We had to turn around and come back a couple weeks later. But I finally was able. It took 17 hours to get to the top of the mountain. And I had one brace on. And I think that was another one of those dominoes because for years I've heard that I was supposed to be in a wheelchair. I was supposed to keep my body as quiet as I possibly can and just do nothing. Just try to extend everything. And it really showed me that a lot of times we give ourselves these narratives because we hear them somewhere else, and then we kind of stick to those narratives. We never challenge them. So it's okay to do stuff we're not supposed to do. And this really taught me that really anything could be possible. And again, I would bring my family up to the mountains, and we just fell in love with it. I can kind of act really smart now and tell you I knew what was happening. I had no idea what was happening in my body, but the lack of processed, the lack of animal products, the lack of oils and sugars, that took all the inflammation out of my body. And then by eating greens and berries and fruits and whole grains, that just gave my body the blocks that it needs to heal. And so our bodies don't want to be sick. They just need to be nourished the right way. And we can't keep jamming poison into our bodies or expecting them to heal. On top of that, this EDS that I have, the Ehlers-Danlos, my joints are really weak. They still are. I dislocate all the time. But the difference is once I start getting some muscle on my joints, which is exactly what they told me I couldn't do, they kind of took over for where my joints were weak. And it was this perfect storm for my body to heal itself. I didn't heal myself from EDS. I still have symptoms, but I have no pain, no inflammation, and I can do some pretty crazy things. So from here, so I kind of came back to Heather, and I'm like, we're sitting at the table, Carolyn's there, our daughter, and I said, I think I want to run 5K. And my daughter just snapped right there. Dad, you know real people run 5Ks. I don't really know what that meant, but Heather thought a 5K was more than a marathon, so we set up about 30 water bottles around our 3rd-mile block, and off we went to train for our first 5K. And I'm telling you, I've crossed a lot of finish lines, but this one is monumental to me. Our first 5K. I didn't know what a race bib was. I had never walked underneath the finish line before, and we got so emotional at the end. People felt got bad news while we were out on the course. It was a beautiful thing. On the way home, I kind of gave her a nudge, and I'm like, what about a 10K? Right? Why not? And she goes, I'm not doing the 10. I almost puked on my boot shoes. I am not doing the 10K. So a few weeks later, we were able to do our first 10K together, which was a benefit for hospice, which meant a lot to us. And on the way home, I gave her another nudge, and I'm like, what about a half marathon? She goes, you're nuts. I'm out. I'm done. And funny thing is, that night I went up to bed, and on my dresser, I had this handicap parking permit. And it was about to expire in September, which just happened to be the month of our big Mighty Niagara Falls, our big Mighty Niagara half marathon. And I thought, how cool would it be to park legally in a handicap spot and run my first half marathon? I didn't park in the spot, but I did take that pass, and I knew it was going to be super hard. So I put a picture of Heather's mom and my dad. I had a friend that was battling cancer, and I punched a hole in that, and I wore it around my waist for my first half marathon. And it was an amazing, amazing day. From there, I would get into marathons, and this is kind of where my story hit the newspaper, and then everything got crazy. But I would get into marathons, and I found people do these really long-distance cycling things, and so I wrote a few centuries, and it just kind of made sense to learn how to swim, even though I was petrified to be in the water. I got into triathlon. And this triathlon, this is at Lake Placid, and I told you it means a lot to me, but this was a half Ironman, so 70.3. And I can remember my coach saying, look at me, it's going to get tough, you're going to want to quit. You got to focus on the finish line the whole time. And I did. But it wasn't the same finish line everyone else was focused on. Because, you know, in the shape I was in, every time Heather would see me, she always felt sorry for me. She didn't know how to help me. She felt hopeless, right? And she wanted to help me. It's kind of like the doctors. They would look like they wanted to help me. They didn't know what to do. But for the first time, I came around the oval where the miracle at Placid happened. And when our eyes met, she was just full of pride. She was so freaking proud of me. And I did it. I did my first 70.3. It was a tough day, but I was glad I was focused on that finish line instead of the finish line, everyone else's. And then I would go on to do full Ironmans in plastic. It's a tough day. It's a 2.5 mile open water swim, 112 miles on the bike, at 10,000 feet of climb, and you finish with a nice little marathon through the mountains. It's a long day, but Heather's been there. She pulled me through this last year too. I wouldn't have done it without her. She took me the last 8 miles. So again, you know, not a flex, but this is 25 years old. I was supposed to be in a wheelchair. They said it would never work, much less walk. I really had trouble walking to my mailbox. And this is the power of not only food, but the power of our decisions. This is all really cool, and we got a lot of medals and letters from governors and senators and half the stuff I don't even know what it is. And it's really fun, and that's what gets me on stages. But I just want to talk to you about the stuff that really matters to me. I told you that the first time I went out with my kids and my wife on this trail, that I got a DNF or did not finish. And what was really cool, the next time we got together on a trail, the 3 of them were my pacers for a 50-mile ultra race. And we did that together. We did it together. And it was the coolest thing because we all worked together. We all worked really, really hard to get me to the end of this 50-mile race. Then I told you that Heather used to put my socks and shoes on me. I got to return the favor because she was struggling to put her backpack on. She just couldn't get her arm through. And I was able to help her put her backpack on. But this time, we were 6,700 feet in the air because we just summited Mount Washington together. I never thought in a million years that was on my list of things to do. My metabolic numbers, my triglycerides sometimes were off the chart. This was actually a low one, 259. After I went plant-based, they're down to 74. Cholesterol, I was always on Lipitor. It was always well over 300. Actually, this says 117. I think I'm at 103, the last blood work I've had. I asked my doctor what medicine can do this. He says, medicine on the planet cannot do this. It can take you from 300 down into the low 100s. It's impossible with medicine. Can't do it. This is interesting. If you like money, have money, want money, this is super interesting. Everyone talks about the health crisis. I don't know that we have a health crisis. We'll talk about that in a minute. But as far as economy goes, this is 2009. My insurance company spent almost $20,000. This is not on doctor's visits, not on surgery, none of that. This is literally just on pharmaceuticals. That's it. This is just me going to the pharmacy. 20,000 bucks. After I adopted a whole food plant-based diet, 2015-16 combined, they wouldn't give it to me on one sheet. The insurance company gave me the 2 years mix, 120 bucks. It was for B12 that I could have got at Walmart. That's powerful because these are just decisions. There's no magic here. I just ate real food and moved my butt. Like, that's what I did for this. Imagine if we could get even 10% of the population to do this, how it would change our health crisis. The ripple effect. My decisions, my bad decisions, my addictions, they didn't just hurt me, they hurt everyone around me. And it's easy, like, even if you're not an addict, you know, it's easy to think that, well, it's my decision, my consequence. But that's not true. The choices you make have an effect on people around you and the animals and the environment, the economy. But it works the other way too. So a couple of years after I switched to whole food plant-based, Heather did too. And I like to run to finish, but she's a little more aggressive than me. She runs to win. And to see her just like a kid that, you know, she took the gym class day off when you had to do that test, the fitness test, and she would never run even if someone was chasing her. To see her out just enjoying, like I cannot tell you what it's like to watch her run and just, she's got her music on, she's just so happy. And that is so cool to me. That's the stuff that matters. And I don't have to get into all this because there's people way smarter than me here, but these numbers, I can't keep up with them anymore. I just literally can't keep changing them. But 70% of the population right now is overweight or obese. We have, this number is so low right now, a $4 trillion. 20% of the gross domestic product gets spent on chronic disease. They're just lifestyle diseases, mainly from inflammation. When I first read this, I'm like, this is no way. 70% of the US is on a prescription med. Then I started thinking 10 people that I know, sure, 7 of them probably are on a prescription med. Heart disease, stroke, certain cancers, lung disease, high blood pressure. This stuff is all growing and growing and growing at an alarming rate. But here's the weird thing. We put more money, we put more time, we have better technology, but we keep getting sicker. So why is that? I think the problem is, my personal opinion, is we need to stop looking for the cure and we need to start looking for the cause. And I believe that cause is right on our plates. Breaking stereotypes. I do this one for my high school kids, and so hopefully you guys will like it. Everyone thinks that vegans are these weak, wimpy tree huggers, and they think that we lawnmower clippings, like that's what we do, right? But nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, many elite athletes are whole food, plant-based, and vegan. In fact, Germany's strongest man right now has been vegan for over a decade, Patrick Balumian. Our food is delicious, it's alive, it's full of color, it's full of flavor. There's so much variety, and every one of those colors gives you a different medicine. Right? And if we just eat these colorful foods, we can thrive. We can give our body what it needs. I went at this 100% for health. But what I've learned along in my journey is this is way better for the environment. It's obviously better for the animals. And obviously I showed you it's better for the economy as well. Everyone thinks eating healthy is expensive, but it's really not. I mean, we eat a lot of beans and rice and potatoes. I don't know how much cheaper food you can get. We eat peasant food, right? So I wasn't going to do this today, but I think it's a good kind of way to reflect a little bit before I finish up. So if I told you guys I have $1 million and I'm going to give it away, think about what $1 million could do for you or other people. Who would take $1 million? Like 2 people? Most people would take $1 million, right? So who's willing to take this $1 million if you knew tomorrow that you'd be terminal and only have a day to live? There's not a person that would do it, right? So the point here is our health is priceless. It's worth far more than $1 million. We need to start living like it's priceless. It's the most valuable thing you have. And so I thought about this a lot, because it hurts me. I work with a lot of people, work with a lot of families, and I see them, pick up a healthy lifestyle. Can I talk about my mom? I could talk about my mom. My mom, I took her to plant stock one time. I was speaking there at the Esselstyn farm, and she locked in whole food, plant-based. She lost 80 pounds, got off literally all her meds. She'd been on blood pressure meds her whole life. She got rid of neuropathy in her feet. She was out walking. It was perfect. She went on a cruise, got a little sidetracked, came back, heavier than when she left, and she just gave it all away. And it breaks my heart to see, because this happens over and over and over again, and I wonder why. And I think, for me, that last kind of domino that tipped could be the most important one, and that's sustainability. I think that we have it backwards. I think that a lot of us think we need to eat healthfully so we can have a good life. And I would ask you guys to flip that around. Because if you're going to eat healthy, to sit on the couch, watch Netflix, binge on series, doom scroll on TikTok, what's the point of eating healthy foods? To push a Snickers bar away and grab some broccoli? Why are you doing that when you sit in front of the TV? And I think the key to sustainability is to build a life that can only be maintained by healthy choices. And I think if we can get a hold of that, I don't know about you guys, but when I get old, I don't want to sit around. I want to go on new adventures. I want to climb new mountains. I want to learn how to paddleboard someday. This is the things that I want to do. And the only way that's going to happen is if I make healthy choices. And that's the beautiful thing about lifestyle. Everyone talks about, can we change our lifestyle? But really, what does that mean? No one can really change their lifestyle. What does that even mean? But here's the cool thing. If you boil it down, basically a simple healthy choice will turn into a habit if you do it enough. And those habits over time, they'll turn into a routine. And guess what those routines turn into? A lifestyle. And that's it. We don't have to think ahead. We don't have to worry about the wedding we're going to next month. All we have to do is make the next choice a healthy choice. And that's all we have to do. The lifestyle will come from that. So, with that said, I have time for Q&A. If you guys want, I have the food that we kind of started us off on this journey. There's a cookbook if you want to scan that, and then you can be on our email list too. And actually, this is great. I have time for questions, and I didn't pass out from the heat. It's actually getting cooler in here. So thank you guys so much. Yes. Yeah. So for me, well, I screwed up a lot. Like for every 100 mistakes I made one thing that was good. But then it's all about how many 100 mistakes you make. So for me, the last animal products I ate was that New Year's night before the juice fast. So I hadn't had any animal products. Now we were still eating like oils and stuff, even after Forks Over Knives for a little bit, but you kind of learn as you go. Mine was kind of instant. Yeah. And I think what kept me going, because I would never suggest that for someone that was eating like me, but I think what kept me in the game was the immediate results. I saw the results, it motivated me, like, holy cow, like, where can I take this? People, I've talked to Doug Lyle, we've had this conversation. Is it better to just go all in or kind of, and the jury's out on it. Like it works different for both, I'm a Band-Aid kind of, I'm like an all in kind of guy to begin with. So yeah. Yes. When and how I met up with Chef AJ. Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I think she found me. I'm not sure. Oh, really? Yeah, it was. I think I was in the Truth About Weight Loss for a while, and that stuff's fun. And I've been interviewed by her and stuff, and that's great. But like now, like where we are now, we have a friendship, and we text each other a lot and check in on each other. So it's turned into from, hey, can I interview you, and you interview me, to, we're buddies now. So yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Oil, sunflower, olive oil. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Yeah. So the question was, do I eat any oils? And then a list of oils. So there's a whole bunch of ways to approach this, but from a caloric standpoint, oil is a really bad deal for a food addict. I can have 2 tablespoons of oil or 3 potatoes. I'm going for the potatoes every time. And I think, again, I'm just focusing on calories right now. I think a lot of people will take a chunk of iceberg, carrots, celery, cucumber, tomato, and they have this beautiful salad. And no one's really going to put 2 tablespoons of dressing on there. It's more like half a cup, kind of drowned it out. What they don't realize, they're taking an 80-calorie salad and turn it into like 900 calories just from the oil. So from calorically, it's a really bad deal. For me, I think it's super inflammatory. That said, like I do ground flax every morning. I mean, I do get the omega-3s and stuff like that. And I'm probably more picky about that now than I used to be. And as far as fats, I eat tofu. I eat, walnuts. I kind of got to be careful with nuts because I could eat like 3 pounds of them at a sitting. But I'm still getting healthy fats for sure. But I personally do not do any oil. Not saying when I go to a restaurant, we go out to dinner or something, not putting oil on the rice, but yeah, I avoid it, unless I'm out somewhere. Yes. Do you do anything different specifically for the gym or building muscle? I do now, actually. Yeah, that's a good question. Do I do anything for the gym now for building muscle? So I used to. I think I never even used to think about it because it works for me. I mean, I had a 500-pound deadlift, and I never even I didn't even know there was more protein in beans because I was just doing my thing. I was just eating what made me feel good. I ate food that didn't make me feel like I need to crawl under the table and go to sleep. I've had some issues. I had almost lost my foot actually, and I've had to heal up some bones and stuff. And I've done a lot of research on it. And so I don't get obsessed with it, but I do make sure that I eat more. I never used to eat tempeh. I eat tempeh, probably a half of a pack of tempeh almost every day. And I'm more conscious of, you know, a little more lentils, a little less potato kind of thing. But it's, you know what, people think it's so hard to get protein. Like I can grow pretty good muscle if I really want to, and it's not hard on whole food. It really isn't. I mean, especially if you're trying to be calorie deficient or neutral, you just have to make your choice. It's like, yeah, push the potatoes away, get the black beans, things like this. Maybe not so much rice and more tempeh, because you are kind of trading stuff. But there's so many good sources of protein, and they don't have to be crazy high calorie. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Yes. So are my 2 children plant-based? So I would say my 2 children are 90% vegan, but not healthy vegan, or not, you know, not whole food plant-based. They have their moments. They eat if they're coming over to visit. They're old. They're 30 and 28, 27. So when they come over, they eat what we feed them. But I would say mostly vegan, but they do the vegan cheese and sour cream and that. Yeah. Yes.
What do you think is the right quantity of protein to not only, I mean, I know the whole argument about, I've been in that argument about
Sure.
protein and that, but what do you think is the right amount? You know, kind of staying on the number.
Yeah, so what do I think the right amount is? You're going to do a whole thing on that, right? Protein?
Yeah, I'm talking about protein.
A whole thing on protein. But I think it can be different for different people, but it's not as much as we think. Yes? Is that a good answer?
Well, yes, I am going to be going into, there's a lot of misinformation about protein.
Sure.
And our protein requirements are actually the most protein we need. And what he's talking about is actually building some protein. To maintain protein, most people eat 20 to 50% more protein than they actually need. And we're going to talk about why that's dangerous at a later talk this afternoon.
Yeah, you definitely want to get on that talk. Yes.
I'm curious what you noticed in changing your diet, how you're digestifying.
Oh my gosh. Can I talk about poop? Like. Okay. Yeah. So last question, and we're next door. I think we have like 10 books. I didn't bring a whole lot of books, but we do have 10 books. So digestion, I'll just talk about poop because I don't really care. And so to be fair, a lot of this opioids, painkillers, like they bind you up like crazy, and I don't even want to get into. They're literally, I would go 2 weeks without making a bowel, like 2 weeks, because of all the narcotics. They would just, and it was awful. But now, you know, it's all about fiber, right? And so my system works really well, and Heather's does. Did I say that? Heather's does as well. It's night and day. You know what? I think I'll close with this. I think a lot of times, did you ever take your car to the shop and they're like, "Oh, you have a bad wheel bearing." You're like, "No, I don't." No, you do. And then they fix it, and you go down the road like, "Holy crap, that was awful!" Like I didn't realize how bad it was. I think our health is kind of like that. We don't know how many things are broken until they're. Look at, I get goosebumps. We don't know. This is so true, guys. We don't know how good we can have it if we just eat whole plant food. And it's amazing to know what you have wrong with you that you don't even know you have wrong with you until it's fixed. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and thank you guys for being such a great audience.
Thank you so much, Tim. Our next speaker will be up in 15 minutes. And if anyone wants to speak to Tim a little bit more and his wife, they're going to be transitioning next door to the other tent. And the people eating there know that you're coming. They'll make way for your stuff.
All right.
Well, there's a breeze.
All right, hello everyone. Allow me to introduce the next speaker, who is a renowned sheltered veterinarian, recognized as one of Vox's 2023 Future Perfect 50 for her contributions to ethical animal care and advocacy. She is the executive director of a nonprofit organization that supports veterinary professionals in promoting ethical practices, has been featured in prominent publications in the U.S. and Britain, and she plays a pivotal role in advancing humane treatment of all species. You are in for a real treat as she shares her experience with bridging the divide between activists and veterinarians. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Crystal Heath.
Thank you, Evan. That was wonderful. So I am Dr. Crystal Heath, and I am the co-founder of Veterinarians Against Ventilation Shutdown. Has anybody heard of what ventilation shutdown is? Yeah, it's awful. This is how we mass kill poultry birds during this avian influenza outbreak. We're sealing up buildings, pumping in heat and steam, and waiting for the birds inside to die. And we've killed 180 million poultry birds this way due to the avian influenza outbreak in an attempt to stop the spread. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm also on the board of LEAP, which is Leaders for Ethics, Animals, and the Planet. And we are known as the humane alternative to 4-H. Do you know what 4-H is? So I used to be a member of 4-H. I was the vice president of my 4-H club. We raised goats and chickens, and then when I discovered that I'd have to kill my baby boy goats if my goats gave birth to boys, I decided not to breed my goats. So my dairy goats were just pets after that. I'm also a horsey person. I grew up riding horses and thought I was going to be a horse vet, and then in vet school I realized the vast majority of horse people were not in alignment with my beliefs. I viewed my horses as members of my family, and a lot of people were raising horses as race horses and other sports, and they viewed them as a way to get ego, rewards, and trophies and these things, and I just did not really like that very much. So a lot of people ask, why aren't more veterinarians vegan? And that's the same reason that a lot of people aren't vegan. Why are dog lovers not vegan? Why are cat lovers not vegan? It's because we just don't think that we can be healthy on an animal-free diet. And who goes to vet school? I find that most vegans and animal rights activists self-select against entering the profession because they initially love animals. Everybody considers being a veterinarian if they love animals and they're younger. And then they start on that route and they have to take classes that involve killing animals. In order to proceed, you have to take these labs, physiology labs that often involve killing frogs and other animals. And so they decide to stop their career and stop pursuit of becoming a veterinarian. So they self-select against entering the profession. And veterinary schools, there's a lot of gatekeeping against vegans and animal rights activists in veterinary schools. Who are the people who are on these admissions committees deciding who can be veterinarians? These are pork producers, people working in animal experimentation. One person who sat on a veterinary school admissions committee said a vegan would get into vet school over his dead body. Still, some vegans and animal rights activists do get into vet school, but they're taught to be quiet about their beliefs. that if they were to be more open about them, that would threaten their career opportunities. And there's also this belief in the veterinary profession, and I think this is a belief that even vegans share, that consumer demand is what's driving demand for meat. And that in order to change the system, we have to change consumers' behavior. But that's not true, actually. The meat industry does not rely on innate consumer demand for their products. They create demand for their products through billions of dollars of marketing, and a lot of that is publicly subsidized marketing. So this is me again with my horse. So this is an example of one of the slides that we get in our veterinary education. We are told that animal rights activists are extremists. They're against us owning animals. They're against rodeos, horse racing, circuses. And we often misinform the public and use violence and stunts in order to receive donations for their organizations to help animals. So we're taught that animal rights activists are often lying. And they're not necessarily wrong. I think a lot of animal rights activists do get it wrong because the industry keeps a lot of their practices secret. And once we go into vet school, we kind of realize, oh, this is the way things work. The animal rights activists were wrong about calves being a waste product of the dairy industry. Vegans often repeat this, that calves are just a waste product of the dairy industry. That's not true. In fact, many dairies make more money selling beef calves than they do by selling milk. So that's just one of the things that vegans say that kind of loses our own credibility, because we just don't know these practices. So why should veterinarians and animal rights activists get together? Well, we've shown in the past that when we join together, we're actually very successful. And this is an example of this. Shelter euthanasia rates have plummeted because we've professionalized the profession of shelter medicine. Instead of bullying and shaming shelter vets who are stuck in this system where they're having to euthanize large numbers of animals who are stuck in cages in these municipal shelters, they are now joining with people in the community who love animals to create more rescues, more transfer partners that these municipal shelters can give these animals to. Members of the community have started spay-neuter clinics and partnered with veterinarians to get more animals spayed and neutered, which reduces shelter intake. So this is an example of the success of animal rights activists and veterinarians joining together to help solve this problem. And we could do the exact same thing, decreasing the production of animal-based protein, using the same model of activists and veterinarians joining together to dismantle consumer trust and confidence in this method of protein production. But how do we do that? So the veterinary profession is already grappling with this problem of the fact that most Americans cannot afford veterinary bills. If you have an emergency with your pet and you go to the emergency clinic, it's going to cost you at many places a minimum of $1,000, and most Americans can't afford that. And sadly, many veterinarians are struggling and having to euthanize animals who they could save because their people can't afford the cost of veterinary care. And why is it increasing so much in cost? Is it greedy veterinarians? No, it's private equity firms buying up small independent practices and then raising the costs so that their CEOs and their shareholders can make money. The exact same thing that's going on with the animal-based protein industry. And what I do is I do high quality, high volume spay neuter. I spay neuter about 150 animals a week. I think this is the answer. This is the way out of this massive problem of animals being sent to shelters and euthanizing them. But a lot of vets repeat these thought-stopping cliches when I bring up the fact that we need to expand access to publicly funded veterinary care, because the clinics that I work out of are publicly funded. They are funded by the city And the city realized this is where we should invest our money because it saves more money to spay, neuter animals and to provide veterinary care for animals than it does to put these animals in the shelter. So, but a lot of vets repeat this when I bring up this fact. They say having a pet is a luxury, and if you can't afford the vet, then you can't afford the pet. But of course, most of us get our animals as rescues. We are taking responsibility for other members of society, and cats are other members of society that we feel compelled to take care of. There's the cat distribution theory. Like, you know, you've gotten a cat, like the universe has gifted you a cat, and now it's your duty to take care of them. These are members of society, and that's kind of the ethic that we need to instill in the veterinary profession that I'm working to instill in my colleagues. So animal shelters are crowded because of the high cost of veterinary care, and animals are being relinquished to the shelter. What's the answer? To provide publicly funded veterinary care before these animals end up in the shelter. But veterinarians are committing suicide. We have a high rate of suicide because we're dealing in this system, end stage capitalism, where our patients are products. Our patients are property, and dealing with this is extremely hard. And it's hard on us, and we don't have the language to verbalize it because we've been taught through vet school and all these things. We are here to serve owners, and pets are a luxury, and if they can't afford it, then you know, that's on them. We have to be hard-hearted about it and make tough choices and euthanize animals because that's just the way things are. And it doesn't have to be that way. And a lot of us working in animal shelters and in these nonprofit rescue groups, we run into animal hoarding a lot. And this is another problem. We are prosecuting old ladies who end up rescuing too many animals and then can't care for them, is locking those women up in handcuffs, those people up in handcuffs because they care and they're trying to solve a problem that society hasn't cared for. Is that the answer? No, absolutely not. Meanwhile, the rich are getting richer, and who is actually committing the most crimes against animals? It's these families, the Mars family. The Mars family owns Banfield, PetSmart, all these pet food companies. They are the richest family in the world. Merck is an animal pharmaceutical company. The Merck family, $81 billion. Boehringer Ingelheim, this is an animal pharmaceutical company. Cargill Macmillan is the biggest agribusiness company in the world. They profit from feeding slaughter-bound animals, and they profit from slaughtering these animals. All of these companies depend on animal-based protein production, animal research, and pharmaceutical companies. If we were to decrease the number of slaughter-bound animals, their profits would suffer. And there is a lot of money in protecting and increasing the number of slaughter-bound animals, because if we were to decrease that, all of these families would lose money. So I don't know what happened there. This is how I'm holding some of these companies accountable. So this is a video that I captured at a large dairy, and this dairy worker was hitting this cow. Now, I'm not about going after dairy workers because these people are part of this system. They're not the problem. Who's the problem is the billionaires at the top who created the system that forces this worker into a system where he has to have callous disregard for these animals. So here's another video of just showing the problem at this dairy, and all of these cows are coming out of the milking parlor. You'll notice the vast majority of them are lame. They're very dirty. They have nasal discharge. This dairy tested positive for avian influenza. And this is months later. The cows are still sick. They're still extremely skinny. The dairy industry says that 98% of their dairies adhere to national dairy farm standards. This video is proof that this dairy does not. And they have a problem. The vast majority of these cows are suffering lameness, respiratory disease, they're thin, And this dairy man in the background is not treating their cows very well. So we filed a complaint with the Kern County Animal Services. You think of animal services, you think of dogs and cats going after that old lady who's hoarding too many animals. But in various jurisdictions, animal services has the responsibility and the obligation to go after animal agriculture facilities too. They just don't know it. A lot of law enforcement just don't know the law. And so we have to inform them of, you actually can go after these facilities if you know the law. So unfortunately, contact was made. This is very vague. I'm going to continue documenting what's going on at this dairy and continue to ask them to take action. But there was another thing, sorry, trigger warning. I don't want to keep that on too long, but I've documented over the months dead cows that they left on the side of the road by this dairy for the rendering truck to pick up. I thought, then I saw a decaying carcass in one of their dirt piles, and I realized they're actually just burying these cows, and that's against California law. So I contacted the water board, and now the water board is taking action against them. And these are things all of us can do. Like, you don't need to be anybody special to go to a dairy and just watch and document and see what's going on and file complaints. So instead of just telling people to go vegan and being vegan yourself, in order to combat those billion-dollar corporations, we have to do a little bit more than that to dismantle the system. This is a New Yorker article that came out the other day. I don't know if you saw this, but one of our veterinary whistleblowers who worked at the Alpha Genesis primate lab in South Carolina reached out to me months before and said, this place is a disaster. The climate control doesn't work. The cages are rusty. The monkeys are getting out. The monkeys, their livers are cirrhosed from years of experimentation. How on earth are we possibly doing any good research on these primates who are diseased and stressed? And she ended up filing complaints with the USDA. The USDA did nothing. She ended up being fired when she complained too much. And luckily, the New Yorker picked this up, wrote this article about her and other people who worked at the private laboratory. This is the lab where 40 monkeys escaped. So unfortunately, too late, still no action has been taken against this laboratory. It's a horrible lab. So more things need to be done. This place needs to be shut down. But at least the story is getting out. The ball's moving on this a little bit. This is another veterinarian who worked at a zoo, and she identified with this story. And this is, you think, zoo vets, a lot of us animal rights activists might be very questioning, very skeptical of zoo vets, because like, how could you work in a zoo with these animals that are confined in cages? I find them to be some of the most compassionate, forward-thinking people who are there because they realize it's a problem and they want to be there for the animals to help them. And they think they can change things. They think they can make it better. They think that maybe they can turn these zoos into sanctuaries, and then they are beaten down by the system. And the people who run these zoos, who are often very narcissistic people who are just in it for the money and don't really care about the animals. So more and more zoo vets too are joining together to speak out and realizing that there's a huge need for change here. So when people go to the vet and are like, you know, this is too expensive. Why isn't this cheaper? It's not the vet's fault. Vets want free vet care too. And I think this is something we can really, if we can get veterinarians off this idea that animals are a luxury, and if you can't afford the vet, you can't afford the pet. Understand that this is part of what we can offer the world is providing healthcare to animals. But in order to do that, vets can't work for free, right? We go to school for 8 years, $200,000 in debt I graduated with, and we don't make very much money. We need to encourage government agencies to pay for this. And you say, like, that's outrageous. How are governments going to decide to pay for veterinary care when we don't even pay for human medical care? Well, we already are doing this. This is actually what our clinic costs, about $110 for a cat neuter, cat spay. Dog neuter is, or dog spay is $245. A dog spay is $275 for a big one. And we do dentals and all of this stuff. So this is part of it's publicly funded, but we're already doing publicly funded veterinary care for large corporations, and I'll go into that a little bit more later too. But it saves money for governments, for cities to fund access to care rather than to fund shelters. For a state like California, the average cost to spay neuter is about $160 per animal. And that's just the veterinarian's cost. That's not what you pay. I don't think you can go to any public clinic and get a spay for $160. But to house, feed, clean, medical care, or adopt out or euthanize is in the $900 to $2,000 range for every animal that enters the shelter. And a 2014 study found that there was a 66% decrease in shelter cat impoundment in 2 years in the studied area, attributed to fewer kittens being born when they implemented a spay-neuter program. This is a paper that I published in the Journal of Veterinary Medical Education. And this paper looked at how many animals veterinary schools are killing in order to train their students. So we got public records from all of the veterinary schools in the United States, their IAPIC protocols, which are their institutional animal care and use protocols, and we calculated for each school, tabulated how many animals are killed. And our vision is we need to switch these schools to an access to care model where veterinarians are performing procedures and surgeries on animals who need it under the guidance of experienced surgeons instead of killing animals for students to learn on. And this is what I did. I was a conscientious objector to animal killing in veterinary school. We had a community surgery program where people would bring in their animals to us to do procedures on. I did a mastectomy on a dog. I did a FHO, which is a femoral head osteotomy on a hip of a dog. And it was good surgeries. I had a surgeon there watching me, making sure I did everything right. The animals got good pain control afterwards. So what was that? Sorry. So I think this is the future for what veterinary schools need to be, instead of just buying animals from biosciences companies and then killing them for students to practice these things on. But when students do speak out and try to conscientiously object, they are bullied and retaliated against for voicing concerns. And this is Dr. Stephanie Fraisel, who went to Auburn University, and her story is on our blog. And she received an F. She suffered PTSD from being a conscientious objector to this bull who was going to be operated on. They were going to remove a bunch of body parts and then kill him afterwards. And she thought this was very disrespectful. But now she is a vet and she's doing great. And she didn't suffer from not performing that procedure on that bull. She suffered from their reaction to her trying to follow her conscience. Now I train veterinary students in the Navajo Nation. I've been to Fiji 3 times, and we train students on animals who actually need surgery, and they are guided by me in learning how to do this. And I think, and this, meets that need for spay neuter in these areas, while also providing that hands-on training, which is so much more valuable than practicing on an animal who's just going to be killed. So there are 30 to 80 million free-roaming cats in the U.S. If each of those females gives birth, we're talking an additional 105 to 280 million cats in the U.S. About 75% of those kittens born end up dying, but still, that would mean 4 to 12 cats a day is what veterinarians would need to spay and neuter in order to keep up with this demand if all of those cats lived. So we definitely need more veterinarians doing spay neuter work, and there's far too few veterinarians doing this kind of work. One Health, this is what we're taught in veterinary school, that human, animal, plant, and environmental health are all interconnected. So if we provide access to care for animals, we not only help the animals, but we help ourselves too. We create a more courageous community that is not normalized to violence against animals. We are empowered to take action instead of just being callous and having callous disregard for those other members of society. But what does this do to us? So in Los Angeles and all over the country, but Los Angeles got on this. I'm from Los Angeles. We realized that cats were getting sick and dying from eating raw pet food. There are avian influenza infected poultry birds and cows making it their way into the food supply. And cats are eating these bodies in the raw food, and many cats got sick and died from it. This is this avian influenza outbreak that I talked about. More than 180 million birds have been killed, but I also suspect there are birds making it to slaughter that are infected with H5N1. This is just recently, still going on. November 6th was the last outbreak in Elkhart, Indiana. Fair Oaks Farms is out there, which I visited. And this is how, I don't want to make you watch this, but this is a study done at North Carolina State University where they put these birds in boxes, sealed them up, and waited to see how long it would take for those birds to die. And that study was used to legitimize ventilation shutdown as a method of mass killing. And that's what the American Veterinary Medical Association used to legitimize this practice. And the USDA looks to the AVMA guidelines in order to reimburse these companies to when they kill their animals this way. So they don't have to put plans in place to use natural methods of killing. Their lack of planning means they can use ventilation shutdown, and they get millions of dollars of money when they kill their birds this way. And this chart is just alternative. When everybody asks me if I go to non-vegan places and talk about this, they're like, what's a better way to do it? Well, there are better, less cruel ways to do it. I never say more humane, I just say less cruel, and that's using nitrogen. When you fill a place with nitrogen, either gas or foam, that decreases the oxygen. They breathe in the nitrogen, they become hypoxemic, they pass out in a few seconds and die a few minutes later. So it's a much less cruel than taking 8 hours or more sometimes to kill them with ventilation shutdown. It's just awful. This is the guidelines for depopulation that legitimizes all of these methods. So when people voice concerns about ventilation shutdown, the producers maintain consumer trust and confidence in this industry by saying, we are using veterinarian approved methods to kill these animals. Like, you're supposed to be okay with that now because veterinarians say it's okay. And this is the AVMA got this $36,000 grant from the USDA to create these guidelines to set USDA policy for how these animals are killed. And this is an email we received via FOIA request. This is a Freedom of Information Act request of the National Pork Board. And it basically says how they were concerned that using ventilation shutdown, they could be charged with criminal animal cruelty. Because like in Minnesota, if you seal up an animal without ventilation, that's a crime. And they said, I do suggest to our state execs to study animal cruelty laws in their states to determine if there would be liability to prosecution if they practice VSD or even mass euthanasia. That's why it's so important to have the AVMA saying it's okay. So now it's industry standard practice to do what would be criminal animal cruelty. And here is the head of the American Association of Swine Veterinarians saying how important it is that the AVMA says this is okay. Coming from the AVMA, it's going to take a veterinary perspective rather than a producer's perspective. And I think that's what we want for producers. It will provide the professional support for what we are likely going to have to do. And this is Jen Sorensen, who is the spokesperson for Iowa Select Farms. Iowa Select Farms killed their pigs using ventilation shutdown back in 2020 during the COVID-19 outbreak and the slaughterhouse bottleneck because workers were sick with COVID and couldn't go to work. So that slowed slaughter line speeds. And Iowa Select Farms decided to mass kill their pigs using this method. And Ben Sorensen said, veterinarians, production and well-being professionals are overseeing the process to ensure accordance with the American Association of Swine Veterinarians and the American Veterinary Medical Association. So we started Veterinarians Against Ventilation Shutdown, and over 2,000 veterinarians have now signed on, asking the AVMA to reclassify this method as not recommended. Did the AVMA listen? No. We submitted petitions to the AVMA House of Delegates. They even changed their House of Delegates manual to prevent petitions like ours from going forward. They banned me and other veterinarians from going to their Cargill-sponsored Humane Ending Symposium. They prevented me from speaking at the SAVMA Symposium. They prevented me from even having a table there after I was accepted to speak there. They prevented me from going to the AVMA legislative fly-in. I'm a longtime member of the AVMA, and they just flat out barred me from going to all of those things. This was a meme that went around all the veterinary Facebook groups saying, beware, Crystal Heath is a dangerous animal rights activist who means nothing good for our profession. They point out how I'm on all these 4-H and equestrian Facebook groups, like because I was a former 4-H'er and equestrian, and they kind of spread this narrative that I'm basically a danger and a terrorist. Glenn Greenwald, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, did this story about me, and he goes through how they surveilled and punished me and other veterinarians. I was on his show. Still, that wasn't good enough for the AVMA to this day. They're still bullying and retaliating against me. I stay a member just so I can continue to point out all of the ways that they are blocking me, and they're not following their mission. This is a nonprofit. They have a mission to protect veterinarians and animals, and they're not doing that. So I talk about publicly funded veterinary care and how kind of outrageous that would be, right? Like, we don't even publicly fund human healthcare in a lot of situations, but we're already doing that for these billion-dollar corporations. They built this huge lab in Manhattan, Kansas. This is the new Plum Island, and it's studying farm animal diseases and vaccinations. So this is a publicly funded, huge institution where they're doing research for the benefit of food and laboratory animals. If I get a cat into my clinic who I suspect has avian influenza H5N1, my cost to test that cat is either $107 for the AGID test or $213 for the PCR. If this was a farmed animal owned by a billion-dollar corporation, they would pay $4.25 at a state-run laboratory. The PCR would cost $56, and a LISA test would be $2, and virus isolation is $92. And what is this? Oh, the multi-species antibody test is $4.25 each. And if your dairy is infected with avian influenza and your cow isn't producing as much milk, the loss of milk production is paid for by taxpayers, by us. If you're vegan, a lot of vegans say, like, stop paying for this, right? Like, you can stop paying for this if you choose not to drink dairy anymore. That's not true. You're forced to pay these companies, whether you like it or not. And some people say, oh no, I only drink local humane milk. That's great. You're still paying for the dairies with the worst animal welfare practices. And so they're reimbursed for testing. Even though the testing can be done for $2 a cow, they're still reimbursed even more than that. And just 1 milliliter of avian influenza infected milk has 1 billion virus particles. And that's enough virus in those cows to infect tens of thousands. Just that 1 milliliter broke down in those cows. And one cow has enough virus to infect pretty much every animal on the planet, but enough to infect tens of thousands of poultry birds. And so this is kind of what the Central Valley of California looks like. You have a poultry facility. This is Central Valley Eggs, one of the nation's largest cage-free egg producers. All these birds are kept in buildings. Right across from Poso Creek Family Dairy, a huge dairy. So Poso Creek Family Dairy was infected with avian influenza. A few weeks later, Central Valley Eggs tested positive for avian influenza, and they had to depopulate 2 million poultry birds They got $10 million of our money to do that. But while this avian influenza is happening in the dairies, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association wanted to maintain consumer confidence in this industry, and they confirmed there is no threat to human health. Milk and meat remain safe to consume. The USDA has confirmed that the affected dairy cows do not appear to be transmitting the virus to other cows within the same herd. All of these turned out to be false. Yes, human dairy workers were getting sick. The meat and the milk was not safe, especially not raw. Cats are getting sick from eating the raw meat. And the USDA, they did find that cows were spreading it to other cows. And they previously said only about 10% of the affected dairy herds seems to get infected with H5N1, and the cows aren't dying. They bounce back to health within a couple of weeks. That I had to go on, I'm sorry, I should have trigger warned, but I went on the ground to the Central Valley to confirm that that was not true. Nobody else was doing this, which I was shocked. But I drove to the Central Valley and saw piles of dead cows on the side of the road, sent my photos to journalists. They confirmed with those dairymen. So now the dairy industry was forced to change their narrative. No longer was it, oh, just a mild disease, no cows were dying. They had to change their language that so many cows were dying, in fact, that the rendering trucks were backed up, which was why there were piles of dead bodies on the side of the road. And this activist, Dr. Crystal Heath, was taking advantage of their plight to further her agenda. How dare I? But this made major headlines. Newsweek kind of broke the story of how many cows were dying from this. Vanity Fair did an article, and they interviewed a bunch of veterinarians to describe this bungled response and how veterinarians, who, when they were asking for testing of these cows, they were being threatened with being fired and losing their contracts. Here's examples of the raw food that was infected with avian influenza and other diseases. So these companies, these billion-dollar companies that are getting our money and getting free diagnostics, are contaminating and infecting our animals. And who has to pay when our animals get sick from it? We do. Is that fair? I don't think so. More contamination with with salmonella and other diseases. So poultry companies have received, this is old data, now it's well over 2 billion, but Jennie-O Turkey Store used to be the one who got the most money, 120 million. And now the Trump administration has raised the amount that we're paying these egg producers from $7 a bird to $17 a bird. We have to pay them when their birds get sick and when they have to mass kill their birds. We are paying $17 a bird for those birds that are killed. That and 73% of all dairy revenues, according to this dairy industry study, this isn't animal rights activist propaganda, this is the dairy industry's own study, 73% of dairy revenue comes from some form of subsidy. So you have to pay the worst dairies, whether you like it or not. And this reminds me of the lab-grown diamond thing. I just thought this was really funny. We created how to grow real diamonds that are cheaper and better quality than the real thing. And so many people are still like, no thanks, it's the suffering that makes it special. So yeah, there's two different philosophies of veterinary medicine. The old model is man at the top, which really it should be corporations at the top, and women, other animals ranked below that on order of moral concern to us. But One Health teaches us all life is interconnected. I also do a lot of photojournalism, and I was recently arrested documenting ICE protests in Los Angeles. This is thank you. I went to court. They haven't filed charges. They just said they have a year to file charges against me. The charge is a misdemeanor, failure to disperse. I was a member of the media. The police would not accept my proof that I was a member of the media. The police didn't even know the law. And that's the thing. These people in charge of enforcing the laws do not understand the laws. And I'm a member of the LA Press Club. The LA Press Club sued the LAPD and the Department of Homeland Security, and they won. And it's just an injunction, and now the police just aren't allowed to brutalize us anymore. If you want to check out more of our press, ouronor.org/press. We had 87 press hits last year. So we're really combating some of this industry propaganda. The Vanity Fair article, the USDA said that this avian influenza virus is just going to burn itself out. It's still happening. This is an article I wrote in Time Magazine with Jane Bauer about the avian influenza outbreak, so you can check that out. We started this group called Veterinarians United, veterinariansunited.org. It's to help mobilize veterinarians for various animal advocacy campaigns. We have weekly live streams where we talk about animal news and what you can do, and FOIA Friday, that's Freedom of Information Act Friday. And any questions, you can reach out to me at cheath@ouronor.org. And I'm also happy to answer any questions here if I have time. Thank you. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've been following, I haven't gone to Skid Row yet, but I've been following some people who are doing that work, and it's absolutely awful. And it just shows how interconnected it all is. Like, there are people trying to breed dogs just to try to make money to sell them. And there's people, they are addicted to drugs. A lot of these people were released from prison and they are put there, and nobody is taking care of them. It's just I don't know what the answer. We just it's outrageous that the LAPD is arresting me for documenting a protest when there's that happening on Skid Row. And people, I'm not saying imprison people, I'm saying help them get the help. And how do you do that? It's a challenging situation, but yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, she said, I thought they passed laws saying it's illegal to take pictures of facilities. Yeah, in some states it is, so check your various state. I don't know what Florida laws are, but they've been also overturned in a lot of places. That's also an important point to I think people should photograph, get charged, and fight the law in court, and so that, because somebody needs to challenge it and say this is unconstitutional actually, and that's how it's been overturned. Yep.
A master's in vet tech, and she said that she had the right to spay neuter on her own. So why not?
As a vet tech, she could spay neuter on her own. Oh yeah, the veterinary. Yeah. The problem we're running into right now is there's not actually a shortage of veterinarians who are able to do spay neuter, but there's a shortage of assistants to help them. And I think we need to get more RVT, registered veterinary technicians, training, and because it costs $20,000 to go to vet tech school, which is outrageous, and they don't make very much money. And we need to encourage more people to go to vet tech school to help these veterinarians. But also, spay neuter is really hard, and I don't think that you can adequately be trained to do that in a short program like that, because there's so much involved in it. Maybe you could neuter a cat, but that's not where the bottleneck is. That we mainly need more support staff so veterinarians can spay and neuter more animals. And I just worry it kind of devalues our patients' lives if we're having people do this. Already, pigs on farms are castrated by veterinarians. They're castrated by farmers and farm workers with no anesthesia, no training. They just rip out the testicles and they do all of these things. So I would like to make that legal or something. But yeah, it's complicated. thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so we're out of time, but if you guys want to stay around and ask some questions, we got a speaker's tent over here to our left, right? So
Thank you. So thank you, Crystal and Keith, for coming to speak. This has been very informative. Really loved listening to your presentation. Again, if anyone has a question that they would like to ask her right now before you leave, we have another speaker that's coming in within 15 minutes. We have a speaker's tent over to the left. And Crystal, if there's anyone sitting over there, we need to make space. Hey, Ted, could you go over and make sure? Thanks.